Is there evidence in Egyptian history or ancient Kemet of the biblical narrative showing Moses as a ruler? There seems to be a strong case for this. Scholars like Antonio Crasto are confident that Senenmut is in fact Moses. Let's explore some parallels between each account. Depending on the timeline we go with, around 1406 BC would have been when the Israelites arrived in Canaan. Multiple historians agree that 967 BC is the date Solomon's temple was built. 1 Kings 6 verse 1, there are 480 years between the start of the building of Solomon's temple to the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. That makes the date of the Exodus 1446 BC. 40 years in the wilderness means they arrived in Canaan 1406 BC. The lifetime of Moses was 120 years. He passed just before Israelites entered Canaan. So he would have been born 1526 BC. How does this correlate with the history of ancient Egypt? Well, the pharaoh during the time Moses was born would be Thutmose I, and Amenhotep II as the pharaoh of the Exodus. Pharaoh Thutmose's daughter was Hatshepsut. She would have been around 15 years old at the time of finding a baby Moses. Hatshepsut, 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Moses' first 40 years in Egypt would take us to 1486 BC. During this period of ancient Egyptian history, there was the rise of a no-name commoner who rose to the top ranks of princedom during the reign of Hatshepsut. She was the 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Thutmose I, before he passed, made Hatshepsut marry her half-brother Thutmose II, but they had no son together. So Thutmose II was ill and passed, and his 2-year-old son with a mistress became Thutmose III. As he is a baby, his stepmother Hatshepsut begins a co-regency with Thutmose III for 22 years. She then passes. During the time of Hatshepsut, who was a senior pharaoh, an individual from a lower-class family called Senenmut rises up ranks. He becomes the de facto ruler of Egypt under Hatshepsut. This was rare. Joyce Tilsley, in her book on Hatshepsut, describes him as her confidant and the greatest of the great. Hatshepsut in inscriptions was said to have a heart full of love and benevolence towards foreigners. So, why the name Senenmut, not Moses? The 3rd BC Egyptian priest Manetho wrote that Moses used that name among his people and another among the Egyptians. Also, Hebrews 11 verses 24 states that Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Senenmut means mother's brother, a title which denotes a rise in rank from commoner to a familial member. It denotes adoption, as Hatshepsut took him in while young, around 15 years old. So rather than a mother's son, a mother's brother. Senenmut became the tutor for Hatshepsut's daughter Neferur. The kingdom had control over Nubia, and he was known to go on military expeditions to places like Ethiopia. Likewise, 1st century historian Flavius Josephus wrote that Moses led army to parts like Ethiopia and conquered. Senenmut and Neferur. Senenmut built an impressive, huge mortuary temple for Hatshepsut in Egypt as the master architecturer, which is interesting because Moses also oversaw the construction of the tabernacle. Both structures had an outer courtyard, same type of pillars, and a concept of a Holy of Holies, also called SRSRW in Kemet. Senenmut had a tomb built for him near the burial site, but it was never finished, but instead destroyed. Someone was clearly upset with him, so he wasn't buried there. He also disappears in ancient Egyptian history around 1486 BC in the biblical text. It says that Moses escaped after unaliving an Egyptian mistreating one of his Israelite brethren. We will put a pin on this for now and get into more parallels in another post.